Welcome back to Sports Talk is McKinney, live from Cincinnati, Ohio. We're at our fantastic Shaw Rental Enterprises here. Of course, got to throw one more shout out to them. Shaw Rental Enterprises always hooks us up when we go on the road following the world of sports. And, thank you so much to Shaw Rental Enterprises. And check them out. Be sure to check out ShawRentalEnterprises.com or look it up under Joey Shaw on Facebook. They got luxurious rentals all over. Love the one in Cotter. I know a lot of times we do our show on the river down in Cotter, but this week we're in Cincinnati, Ohio. The song that was leading in said breakdown. It's time for us to kind of break down the rest of the NFL playoffs. Of course, tomorrow we have the NFC wild cards. Playoffs, Mike.
We talking about playoffs?
Yeah, we're talking about playoffs.
All right, let's talk about playoffs.
So tomorrow, who we got on tap for tomorrow?
Well, let's see. Who do we have on tap tomorrow? Green Bay and Washington. All right, let's look at that one first.
Well, Green Bay and Washington. Of course, Washington surprised everyone. They had a 4% chance of making the NFL playoffs this year, and they ended up making the playoffs. Squeezed in, of course, they're in that NFC East that is just atrocious. All you got to do is finish 500 to have a chance there. But we have them going against Green Bay, which has, what has happened to the offense with Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers? I mean, earlier this year, we were talking to them about being a Super Bowl favorite. They ended up, just making it in on the wild card, but the Green Bay Packers are not the dominating team that we had earlier predicted them being, Mike.
And and there's a flip side to that. But first, when we look at Aaron Rodgers, I mean, we talk about, he's been struggling, right? He's not his usual self. I mean, but you look at his stats. He's thrown for over 3,800 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. That's a pretty good year, Dave.
I mean, yeah, any team, would expect, if you could tell a team at the beginning of the year, you're going to have a quarterback that's going to throw 30 touchdowns, this many interceptions, 3,800 yards, they would die to have that. Of course, Aaron Rodgers, compared to how he's been playing, it is a step down, but just the offense in general seems to really be struggling. I mean, even though he's putting up good numbers, but a lot of those numbers lately has been done in the fourth quarter when they're having to come back from large deficits.
Right, and then on the other side, we've got Kirk Cousins, and his numbers are very Aaron Rodgers-esque. He almost hit the 30 touchdown plateau. He had 29 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and he threw for over 4,000 in a walk year. He's going to be a free agent, and there are lots of teams that, including the Redskins, who are going to be after his services. So it's going to be really interesting. He could even up his stock even more with, a good showing tomorrow. And, I would have to say, go along with Las Vegas and give the advantage to Green Bay. I'm going to say Green Bay is going to win.
Well, Mike, I'm going to have to agree with you on that. I think
it's going to be close, though, Dave.
I think Green Bay, for one, I think Rodgers' experience is going to, just kind of like the Bengals and the Steelers tonight. You have a team that's used to going deep in the playoffs. Then you have a team like the Redskins, not used to going very deep in the playoffs.
Happy to be there.
Yeah, they're just happy to be there, surprised to be there. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to at least be able to get them past this first-round game. Now, do they make it any further than that? I'm not thinking so right now, but I think they will win tomorrow against the Washington Redskins.
And which is funny because, one of our first segments this year, who did we both pick to go to the Super Bowl from the NFC?
We were looking at the Packers earlier in the year. They was our favorite before, of course, I think the Carolina Panthers just came out of nowhere this year, and then we saw Rodgers, kind of struggling with his offense lately.
They can still hit a roll, and they can still make it, but right now I would not pick them to win any game past this week. But if we look at the other side, the other matchup tomorrow, the Minnesota Vikings, which, Dave, the Minnesota Vikings, they're 0-4 in the Super Bowl. I'm sure they'd like to, try and get there and rectify that 0 that they have hanging over their heads in Super Bowl games and win one. And this is a year where I think they could. I think any of the NFC teams could get there. It's going to be an interesting game tomorrow, though, Dave, because they have a matchup against the defending two-time NFC champion, Seattle Seahawks. And who knows what's going to show up. Of course, it's going to be cold tomorrow, and Russell Wilson and company, you wouldn't think that, they're going to be comfortable playing in sub-zero temperature. But then again, is there anything that these guys can't do?
That's crazy to think, a team from Minnesota, I think back to the 70s and Chuck Foreman, playing outdoors. Of course, they're a dome team. They're from Minnesota, but they're not used to playing out in the cold. And to me, I was going with Seattle early for that, but that's when I thought Marshawn Lynch was going to play. And, of course, we got word here in Cincinnati just a few hours ago that Marshawn Lynch is not going to be playing tomorrow.
Yeah, he didn't even make the plane.
Yeah, and I think without Marshawn Lynch, I think his running game would give the Vikings a lot of trouble, but I'm actually going to go with the Vikings on this, even though the Seahawks are still, they're going to be a hard team to beat. I mean, they were 10-6, but they had 4 or 5 games they lost in the last minute. They could have easily been 13-3, 12-4. But I think without Marshawn Lynch, I think that is going to affect the game. And I think Adrian Peterson is going to be hard to handle for the Seattle defense, which doesn't seem to be as loud and as dominating as they were in the past few years when they were making their Super Bowl runs.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think the key, one of the keys, that Minnesota's defense is going to be solid. They've been solid all year long. It's how Teddy Bridgewater responds to playoff football. Seattle, they're used to it. Pete Carroll has his team ready for the playoffs every year. We can tell by the, appearances in the Super Bowl, almost winning, back-to-back Super Bowls last year before that, incredible play at the end of the ball game. Of course, they have Adrian Peterson, so they've got the advantage on the ground. Definitely, because the Seahawks are a lot like Pittsburgh as far as the ground game. There is no go-to guy, but they have a quarterback and he's healthy. If I was betting on this, in Vegas, I would definitely put my money on Minnesota. They're getting 4.5 points at home. And I hate to make this pick, because I don't know if there's a team that I hate worse than the Seattle Seahawks, but I think they're going to come away with the win tomorrow somehow. Just Russell Wilson. I think that's pretty much all I would have to say to explain my pick.
Well, Mike, and I think that's a good pick. Russell Wilson this year had over 3,000 yards. The first player to have over 3,000 passing yards and 500 yards rushing, I believe. Russell Wilson had a fantastic year. I think it's going to be a good game. I think I'm going to be going with Minnesota on my pick. But if it's anything like the games we had today, of course, the Kansas City game was kind of a stinker watching-wise, but Chief fans were happy to get the victory. But the Pittsburgh game, just an absolutely incredible change of events, all going through it. And just a real quick pick for next week, Mike. We just picked the NFC games for tomorrow. Next week, Pittsburgh going to Denver. Who you got for that one?
Well, it's hard to pick now. It'll be easier in a few days. But with the shoulder injury, I'm just going to go ahead and say Denver with the home field advantage. The rarefied air, I just think that there's too big of a chance to make the Steelers the pick with all the injuries that they're suffering. And I think on the other side, it's too difficult to pick against New England at home. I don't think Bill Belichick loses a divisional game at home.
Well, Mike, I have to agree with you. I'm going with New England over Kansas City. I am going to go ahead and go with Pittsburgh, just because I always have to go with Pittsburgh since they're my team. But, I agree. The AFC is a lot more wide open than the NFC is right now, and I think it's going to make for some great playoff football. But our producer's telling us we got to go to break here, and we're live here in Cincinnati, and getting ready to catch a plane home tomorrow, and we'll be home in time to watch the NFC playoffs. But we'll be right back for our next segment here on Sports Talk is McKinney, live from Cincinnati, Ohio.